My name is Nagel, and I consider myself to be a light scribe. Let me explain. This photograph by Gary Winogrand resonates with me and my past in so many ways. The little boy on the bench looking at the world represents me. I was 10 years old when this picture was taken. Ever since I opened up my eyes to the world, I was fascinated by light, shapes, lines, form, texture, the people and the world around me. From the start I felt the urge to talk and tell stories using pictures, and build visual models in my head when describing complex theories. At first I just wanted to, as Gary Winogrand asserts, see how something looked photographed. This is one of my earliest photographs. I was learning to see light. The soft focus and reflection in the eyes have a certain dreaminess, and in this I see myself reflected in this picture. My teachers always said I was a dreamer. It was my first attempt at doing a Rembrandt using window light. I can't remember, but I was possibly reflecting artworks that my dad shared with me. Today I see a bit of Julia Margaret Cameron in it too. I took this image of my cat backlit with my study lamp in 1979, a photograph reminiscent of precise Paris at night. However, for me it reflects on a time I deliberately removed myself from general societal issues. I no longer involved myself with the lives of any communities outside the parameter of my protected life and relative bliss. Deciding that I had too much of politics and violence in my military years, I immersed myself into my studies, starting my own career and finding love. However, the poem by Rod McKeon I added into my album amplified how I felt about myself at the time. Especially the line, I do not live within a lie because I do not live at all, before finding love of course. In the same way this photograph haunted me, as if I needed something else to worry about. This is a quote from A Tree of Wooden Clogs, a film by Ermana Olmi, which I saw in 1979. It was a story about young love getting new clogs for the sun, slaughtering the pig and daily labouring in the fields, while being oblivious to the outside world where the Italian Revolution raged. It's exactly how I lived. Ironically, the photograph juxtaposes the wealthy and the poor embracing each other. Franklin in his book, The Documentary Impulse, write that the documentary impulse is about human experience in all its range and complexities. The impulse to document my life and that of those around me is prevalent in most of my photography. I strive to describe the world as I see it with my naked eye. At first I did not know how to define my photography, but 2 years ago, when doing the course looking at photographs with the Museum of Modern Art, I realized that I have been primarily taking documentary photographs. To illustrate briefly, I present one of my photographs from a series I took whilst visiting Turkey in the year 2000. I used the repetition of the obelisk and the towers to accentuate my sense of the intertwining of Egyptian, Roman and Turkish histories and architectures. I missed the top of the obelisk because I was using a 35mm Instamatic camera. As part of my personal growth, I started to study theology and philosophy. This introduced me to critical thinking, and I found things were changing in me at a deeper level and the way I saw the world. Some may call this the dark night of my soul. I died to my egotistical self. As St. John on the Cross wrote in his last stanza of his poem, I abandoned and forgot myself, laying my face on my beloved. All things ceased. I went out from myself, leaving my cares. This led me into a new phase of my photography. I was looking deeper. It is what David Duchovny says. When we look at our photographs and find not the slightest reflection of ourselves, it's a good sign that our images have lost their souls. The digital age arrived, and my wedding business expanded at a rapid pace. This new learnings and the experience with some social documentary work I did for the church taught me storytelling, which found its way into my wedding photographs, and my popularity increased. My personal research led me to investigate ways in which I can make my photography more significant and to re-establish the links to my artistic self. This new passion for photography and the effort to develop myself made me realize how much I had to offer as an art and photography teacher. As Frank Oppenheimer said, the best way to learn is to teach. I developed training courses for amateurs, and in a way this was my informal tertiary education. I was being inspired by the practices and photographs of the masters I was now referencing in my courses. As Desmond Tutu said, we are all connected. What unites us is our common humanity. I don't want to oversimplify things, but the suffering of a mother who has lost a child is not dependent on her nationality, ethnicity or religion. White, black, rich, poor, Christian, Muslim or Jew, pain is pain, joy is joy. At first I mentally changed my nationality from Afrikaner to South African. In my mind, I would no longer associate myself with a specific group being defined by race, creed or religion. Taking a position required you to draw lines. Apartheid. More recently, I have decided to even relinquish my position as a South African. I have become egalitarian. This is a photograph taken at a retired apartheid police general's funeral. It was attended by right-wing AW members and his ex-colleagues, some of which happened to be African, all unified in grief. This new freedom from the constraints of my ego, conforming to someone else's views on politics, nationalism, religion and economics, allows me to see people as people. South Africans love sport. This moment was captured during the celebration of Wade van Niekerk's world record. The diversity of people celebrating the event standing on a stairway seemed to celebrate our ascension from our past. For my project, I propose to use the Hegelian dialectic as a basis to describe, through images, our current societal development, documenting the resolution of the conflict between Western modernity and African Ubuntu. I am heavily influenced by what Sturgeon and Cartwright describe as colonial modernism or paternal modernity. As a descendant from Europe, I tend to consider it better than any other philosophies. The theory is that if Western modernity was and is still seen as superior and influenced us and keeps on influencing us, then I am a product of that philosophical system. It presents the thesis of a society before the handover of political power in South Africa in 1985. To explain using architecture as a theme. This is the head office of Sasol, originally a parastatal company created during the apartheid era to overcome the embargo on fuel by producing oil from coal, a symbol of progress through science. Today they provide labor to over 31,000 people in 32 countries. In Southern Africa we have a concept called Ubuntu, which is that you can't exist as a human being in isolation. You can't be human all by yourself. We think of ourselves far too frequently as just individuals, separated from one another, whereas what you do, what I do, affect the whole world. Taking that a step further, when you do good, it spreads that goodness. It is for the whole of humanity. When you suffer or cause suffering, humanity is diminished as a result. This is an architectural drawing of the Ubuntu Center in Zwede Township, Mandela Bay. The Ubuntu Center currently feeds 2,000 poor children each day, providing holistic support to 3,500 clients and their families, delivers after-school education to 250 students, and issues HIV counseling and testing to 6,000. If the Hegelian dialectic is a valid approach, then one can expect a natural synthesis of the two philosophies, where conflicts will be resolved, and a new thesis be developed that is uniquely South African. I want to also investigate if I can observe this synthesis in my photographs. This architectural drawing is the latest retail space in Midrand, the Mall of Africa. It provides 485,000 square meters of space. The shopping space itself is only 131,000 squares. This is a view of the Western Gateway, a post-industrial building at the main entrance of the mall. Here is a tree rooted in the African soil, nourished with the waters from the rivers of Africa. Come and sit under its shade and become with us the leaves of the same branch and the branches of the same tree. Robert Sobukwe. This image not only stimulates my visual senses through aesthetics and lines, but fills me with an excitement. My children may still have a beautiful future ahead of them. I realize that work of this magnitude could take more than a lifetime, and I have little of that left. So I will address themes in workable chunks, clearly demarcating the scope to achieve the desired outcome. The depth of my research will depend on time constraints and my commitment to the task. But the work can be done iteratively, with each cycle building on the other. In this semester I will open up my photographic eye and do an initial photographic survey. Critically read Franklin's book The Documentary Impulse and scholarly works on Ubuntu. I will also attempt to identify knowledgeable collaborators to assist me in reviewing my future work. I will record my findings and determine which themes I want to pursue in the other semesters. As my ultimate intention is to teach, I will also focus my research on the documentary approach and aim to prepare for a workshop to share my learnings at the end of the MA. I conclude in the words of David Duchemin. The camera on its own is a wonder, but in the hands of a poet, the storyteller, the change seeker, or the frustrated artist, it can create something alive that touches humanity. Thank you.